Tony Basilio joins me today. This is Tuesday afternoon. Probably feels like Tuesday night to Tony at this point. He had a late night. He does post-game call-in stuff in Knoxville. He has followed Tennessee baseball for a while. He was up to the wee hours of the morning following the Vols super regional win in Hattiesburg. Tony, thanks for joining us today.
Chris, it is always a pleasure. I admire you, man, and I appreciate your work.
Appreciate you, and likewise. Let's start here. Okay, last year, Tennessee rolled through the college baseball world. I think lost, 7 games in the regular season, got beaten in one series all year at Kentucky, and then got punched in the mouth in a super regional by Notre Dame in its own ballpark. I don't think Tennessee quite knew how to react in that one because it had not been in that position. And you get the deer in the headlights for just a moment sometimes, and that's your season. That's the way it ended a year ago. This year, Tennessee had its back against the wall almost from the beginning. Gets swept at Missouri to open the season. Was below 500 at the midway point of the season, although a tough schedule had a lot to do with that. In the SEC, that is, at least. Then comes the Vanderbilt series, which it's behind in the ninth, 2 runs off a closer who hadn't given up a run all year. Tennessee hits 3 home runs, wins that game. It has been a lot of forward momentum ever since. And then you saw the same thing against the Vols in the regional, down, 2 to Clemson with its last strike in the winner's bracket, down 4-0 in an elimination game in Hattiesburg. You go at it, and I think adversity in a lot of ways may have been what made this team, but you see it up close. Is that fair or unfair?
Oh, I think it's totally fair. And look, I mean, I was on my daily show, and I know Tony pretty well in the inside apparatus of that baseball team. It's my belief that if the Vanderbilt series would have gone the way it looked like it was going to go, which is Vanderbilt comes in here and knocks Tennessee out, which if you use a boxing analogy, Tennessee had been through, say it's a 12-round fight. Tennessee had been through 8 really hard rounds. They had won 1 up till that point. They hadn't won a series on the road to that point. They internally was not going well. They were not getting along. There was a lot of bickering. There was a lot of just, when you lose, it's no fun, especially when you got guys that are used to winning and you have a coach that's used to winning. And so, those 2 at-bats weren't just 2 at-bats in the 9th inning. They occurred from 2 true freshmen. Saved their season. And Chase Burns comes out. Chase Burns, since he's been a Tennessee uniform, has never, and I have Evan Russell on with me, who's excellent. Chris, you ought to get him sometime. I could help you. Evan is on me on Mondays, and I was talking to Evan off the air, and I said, Evan, have you ever seen Chase Burns act like that? And he said, no. We didn't know he had that in him. And so it seemed like, was borderline offended or whatever going to the bullpen. But his body language that night was, I'm mad at the world, and I'm going to take it out on Vanderbilt. And from that moment on, it was a different season. Tennessee went on a swept Vanderbilt. I think they blew them out of every game, essentially.
The last 2 for sure.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The last 2, which was really strange. I mean, because here we were all prepared for Tennessee's going to get swept this weekend. I mean, that was my mindset going into that. And at the very least, Vanderbilt's going to win 2 out of 3. Maybe the Vols can win a game. But baseball is a sport where it just is mysterious how it comes and goes. This team just got through a super regional, Chris, hitting 210 as a team. Some things are meant to be. 210. They were down 4-0 with the race on the hill. And the kid from the mid-state, Zane Denton, made an incredible play at third base. Todd Walker, doing the game, said, who's excellent, by the way, Todd said, you might want to circle that because I've been around this sport for a while. He said, and that was getting ready to be a 7-run inning. If that ball gets down the line, that was getting ready to be a 7-run inning. That was out number 1. Dolander Wiggles gets the next 2 guys and goes on to retire 17 of 18, working into the 9th inning. in that second game. That's pivotal stuff. Burns comes out, gets the final 3 outs. Tennessee's alive going to yesterday. All of a sudden, this thing has a different feel because Tennessee was very much on the ropes. They hadn't shown the ability to come back from a 4-0 deficit all season. You know, the thing with Clemson, the Clemson game, talking to people like yourself that have watched this college baseball thing a lot longer than I have, people are saying that's one of the great games that the sport has seen.
Oh, it was. It was.
You know, so there's like a little air of, I don't know, when you hit 210 in a regional and you get through a tough team in Hattiesburg like that, a coach coaching a legend down there, rightfully so, coaching his final game, and you get through that hitting 210 as a team, that's not a club I'd want to face in Omaha. Tennessee's got a little something around them because they really didn't, outside of the pitching piece, they really didn't do a whole lot to get through that super regional against a very good team.
Well, to that point, we'll detour here a little bit. I don't know if there's anybody I want to face in Omaha at this point. I've seen a lot of College World Series, Tony. I don't know that I've seen one where the 8 teams across the board are this good. I mean, the weak link in it is Oral Roberts. Oral Roberts lost 1 game in its league, and I know it plays in a league with me and you, but, you know, you play any team 23, 24 times. I don't care if you're matching up 1 in 300. You're probably going to blow a game somewhere just because it's baseball. And I thought Oral Roberts was a very underseeded 4, which wound up advancing. Got a little help from Vandy blowing it in Nashville and going to Oregon instead of Nashville. But they earned it. They won, 50 games this year. TCU was a preseason top 15 team. I guess that's your next weakest link. And then you got the Blue Bloods. You've got Florida, LSU, Virginia, Stanford, a Tennessee team that was preseason number 2. I was just working on, I do some fantasy baseball writing, and I'm doing some stuff for telling people who to watch out for in the College World Series, you know, down the line that you might want to end up with on your team. I don't ever remember a longer list of potential first-round guys, and we're talking power bats, we're talking aces. I think you've got everything in this College World Series, and it might be. Look, I don't go back to 1947, and even then the game was different for the first, I don't know, 3 or 4 decades. You used to have teams that were regional hosts, like the Big Ten region was going to get a team in Omaha just because that's how it's set up. It's set up differently now. But as far back as I go, and I've been watching the event for about 25 years, I don't ever remember a field that's as impressive as the one that we're about to see.
The game's really grown, hasn't it? And
It has.
These power teams are, I don't want to say they're hoarding the talent, but everybody has a kid. Everybody has a kid that throws mid-high 90s. And, you know, I was reminded today by Chris Burke that one of the top home run guys at South Carolina came off that Southern Miss team. And that Waldrop kid who's led Florida this year came off that Southern Miss team, or they'd be probably sitting there. I mean, that's reality. So
yeah.
the depth of these teams, Tennessee side of that bracket, why there's not a reseed of some kind.
Yeah.
I mean, Tennessee side of that bracket is totally, completely ignorant for everybody.
Yeah, it's my dog is very upset by this, as you may be hearing in the other room.
I'm loving every minute of your dog. I've got one.
He's
dogs
not
are
wrong,
life, brother. I love the love you get from dogs.
They are. Well, I'm mistaken. Matt Hogan transferred from South Carolina to Oral Roberts. I'm getting mixed up here.
Yeah.
Waldrop transferred. He was Southern Miss's ace. He's now
That's
at
right.
Florida, and I forget the bat now.
There's a bat there. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you see some of these schools at the lower level benefit from getting kids that are cast-offs from some of these SEC teams that are fourth outfielders. You give them a chance to play every day, and it clicks. So it does counterbalance somewhat. But, yeah, it does seem to me like – I mean, just look at the SEC, Tony. Mm-hmm. You've got Vanderbilt and Arkansas were top 8 national seeds, and I think what did both those teams in was just pitching. Both those teams got enough key arms hurt that you kept going, okay, when's it going to bite them? And it wasn't this week, and it wasn't that weekend. Bit them in a regional. We've talked about the 3 teams that are there already. Alabama, I thought, was Omaha caliber. Just got I thought a 16 seed was getting job there.
Mm-hmm.
And you got the 2 teams that are the 2 defending national champs, didn't even make Hoover. It's crazy how much talent we see in this league.
And it's very unforgiving. And, Tennessee was in that spot. Telling you, you go back to that Vanderbilt series, Tennessee was, you talk about on a razor's edge. They were right there. And then down to the last strike with Clemson. And the truth is, the loser of that marathon game was going home the next day.
Yeah.
Out there in that heat. Tony said, and the biggest thing I like about Tony, he kind of calls it like he sees it. He told the media, he said, look, that could have easily been us going home. He said, Clemson's got a great team. He said, if that would have been us getting beat, getting back to the hotel at 3 o'clock in the morning, having to get up at noon, when you get about 4 hours sleep in that scenario, at best, maybe 5, and having to get up and play that noon game the next day, it's very unforgiving to get in that loser's bracket. That's why it's nearly impossible to win in those regions once you lose.
Yeah, and a couple other things you said here. I'm a big baseball guy, and a lot of baseball is just it's baseball. I remember 2014, 2015, Vandy's playing for the national title. Got a great shot to win it. Roller to first base, hits the bag, jumps over the first baseman's head, scores 2 runs. That ends up being the deciding play in the series. You had the drop foul pop that would have given Arkansas one. You just have little plays here and there that are sort of, it transcends. It's not like football. You just come in and just overwhelm somebody. But in college, I do think the mental part is a little bit more, it's a little different for college kids than it is for major leaguers. And to me, I thought the minute Blake Burke hit that home run, 479 feet, you could kind of feel the air go out of Southern Miss. And you talked about Clemson and losing a game like that. It seems like you see a lot of stuff like that in college baseball. And Tennessee seemed to do a lot of make your own break stuff when its back was against the wall this year.
Very true. And that's why that's a scary opponent for somebody. I was at the Notre Dame game last year when Tennessee got eliminated on the Sunday. And it was an oppressively hot day in East Tennessee. It was scorching. And I asked Evan about that, Evan Russell again, regarding that day. I said, it felt like you guys felt the weight of the crowd when they took the lead go on your shoulders. He said, it's funny you'd mention that. He said, I don't know if I've ever had a feeling like that in a baseball game. I don't know. He said, I'm just talking about me personally. And there's something about those games where that thing gets transferred to the other team. Now, all of a sudden, you've got to carry it. You've got to get it off your shoulder somehow. That certainly happened to Southern Miss when that home run was hit. And, and you could see last night, Southern Miss had no answers. They just weren't going to win last night.
Yeah, well, it may be the reason you haven't seen a 1 seed win the whole thing since was it, Miami in '98?
Yeah.
And maybe this is the year it happens because Wake's awfully good in the top part of that bracket too. But a lot of good teams, I could say. Probably Oral Roberts is the only team I can't see winning it. Maybe TCU, but I mean everybody else is got a puncher's chance in this. But back to the team you cover for just a minute. To me, there's 2 key things that happened this year. One was off season, one was in season. And I heard the ESPN guys mention this last night about Zane Denton. He's a really quiet kid. And you remember last year, they had Trey Lipscomb at third, and they had Jordan Beck and, oh, goodness, the center fielder whose name, Drew Gilbert. I mean, those guys were stirring the pot constantly. And it seemed like that sort of came back to bite them against Notre Dame. Denton's just a kid who goes about his business. He's not a superstar in this league. You talked about the defensive play he made. I felt like this Tennessee team was a lot calmer this year than the one a year ago. I feel like maybe that's an ingredient that they needed. And the ESPN guys pointed out him being a part of it. And you see it up close more than I do, but I thought that was an interesting comment, and maybe they were onto something there.
Point of focus for them this year.
Yeah.
Tony told me last year, he said, I'm never going to let a team that's playing in a round think they're playing in another round. He said, we had a team last year that was playing in the College World Series when we were in the Super Regionals. He said, and that's on me. He said, we got way distracted by all the noise we were making, the noise other people were making. And this year, he dialed himself back purposefully. If you look at how he's behaved, doesn't engage with umpires as much as he was, doesn't do that stuff. Frank Anderson's going to do Frank Anderson things, a pitching coach here. He's just going to do Frank Anderson things. There's really not much you can do about that. But who can argue with a guy that develops arms the way he does? I mean, the guy just continues to develop arms. This team this year started up the season trying to live up to and be something they weren't, last year's team. And they've slowly developed into kind of a workmanlike, kind of a no-frills team, and it's really served them well. That's where they are.
I think
not a lot of chatter.
I think you're right.
Yeah. In fact, ironically, let me put something out. Ironically, against Clemson, one of Clemson's freshmen was trying to engage Tennessee, and he's a key player. He's a big play in the game. He got thrown out of the game. Well, Denton went back to the dugout, and his teammates asked him, according to a source of mine, his teammates asked him, what'd he say to you? He said, I have no idea. I didn't hear him. He said, I really wasn't paying attention to him.
Yeah. Yeah, that I agree with you. It's a much different team. They have their fun. They do the daddy hat. They do the coach, and they do the fun stuff. But some of the edge that I think came back to bite them a year ago,
No doubt.
I don't see it as much.
No.
The other thing, this was the in-season thing. You mentioned Chase Burns. The other half of that swap was Andrew Lindsey, who was not even in baseball a year ago. He was at Charlotte 2 years ago. He starts the season as their closer. Burns had issues throwing strikes. They moved Lindsey to the Friday night spot, and I think he was the most underrated player in the league this year. I did a first-team All-SEC team. I named 3 starting pitchers because why wouldn't you? You've got 3 guys throwing in the weekend.
Yeah.
He was one of the 3 that I had, and I think he earned it. I don't know that anybody else would have put him there, but I thought statistically he justified it. He has been a rock for them. I think that is maybe the move that Tony Vitello made in season that probably paid more dividends than any.
It took a lot of guts to do it. Because when you made that move, you really did 3 things. You took Chase Burns and you risked alienating him, which, you that's tough to walk up to a kid who everybody's saying, you're the next Kumar Rocker, you're the next this, you're the next that. You say, hey, you know what? You're out of my rotation. And the kid had like a 13 ERA at the time. So it wasn't like this wasn't earned. He was really struggling. The second thing they did is they told Dolander, you're not this Friday starter anymore. We're shuffling our lineup, which this is the kid that was before
potential
we saw
1-1 overall.
There you go.
Yeah.
He was 1-1 before we saw Paul Skeens. And then the third thing is you gave a ball to a guy in this league who, in your words, which is correct, who had last year off. So those were 3 things, 3 pretty gutty things for somebody managing a team to do. The truth is, Chris, at the time, Tennessee had very little choice in the matter because the season, if they didn't do it, was getting ready to get away from them. And then what it comes down to is, am I going to do the right thing by my organization and all the work we did in the offseason, or am I going to save feelings? And they decided to let everybody sort out their feelings. And this is where they are, because they're not here right now if they don't do that. There's no way.
Well, everybody feels better when they win, and they've been doing a lot of that lately.
Yeah.
And I think the other key to it is Drew Beam. I saw him pitch last night. Again, we're doing this on Tuesday. Beam's a guy that's been low 90s from what I remember. He may have ticked up a little bit, but more of a pitch to contact, soft contact guy, keep you off balance, don't walk guys. The guy I saw last night was a different dude. He's hitting 95 consistently with the fastball. That I don't know what they call the breaking pitch, if it's a slider or a sweeper or a slider cutter, which there's another word for that. You're hearing some I won't put on this. Whatever that pitch was, it was working last night, and it was really devastating to right-handed hitters, which Southern Miss seemed to have a good number of. That's a different dude, I feel like, than what I've seen most of Drew Beam's career. Am I right about that?
You're absolutely accurate. I guess we call that thing a slurve here.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he was unhittable last night. Because when he locates that pitch and is able to back it up, and he was, in a sense, almost pitching backwards, because the one thing Tennessee knew about that Southern Miss team that they got to look at them after the 2 games is their first pitch swinging a lot, and they're guessing fastball. So he started a bunch of those veteran hitters with off-speed stuff, handcuffed them. They didn't get good swings at him last night. In fact, neither team really got good swings at the ball except for the couple that Tennessee put out of the park. But, man, Beam was about as good as you could possibly be, and his velo was up last night. And then you have Burns coming in on, after working the day before, hitting 102 on the gun. I don't know what was in the air last night. Something was in the air.
There's a lot of guys hitting triple digits this postseason. I think I've
Crazy.
seen Burns do it. Did Dolander hit 100? I think he was high 90s. I don't know he got there.
Yeah, I think he got to 99 a couple times, yeah.
Yeah, Brandon Sproat hit 100 for Florida. It seemed like I saw somebody somewhere else do it. But here's what I want to ask you on their pitching.
Yeah.
Because I think when Burns comes in the game, I don't know which way it's going to turn. Lately, it's been a lot more good than bad, and he's been pretty dominant late. But we've also seen some times where that goes a little sideways. It did at South Carolina to end the regular season. If that's not working, they need a guy to close games out. Who's it going to be?
Well, it's a great question. Camden Sewell's another arm they could use. That's a 5th-year guy, 6th-year guy, who decided to come back this year after giving up baseball. But he decided to make one more go at it. Halverson's a guy that they could use in that spot, who they've used there. When you have a Friday night starter that pitched at Missouri, basically, I'm not going to say buried in your bullpen.
Yeah.
But
he's a long man.
Borderline buried, yeah. They have an embarrassment of riches, Chris.
Yeah, they do.
You get a double elimination deal here. This is a super regional that's getting ready to happen here on the Tennessee side in this World Series with a double elimination bent. A team with their pitching, if they hit the ball a little bit, could get through that with their pitching staff. The depth of that pitching, because LSU doesn't even come close to having the depth of pitching Tennessee does. Not close.
No.
Not a third of it. They don't have a third of Tennessee's pitching.
And then let me rephrase the question I prompted this with. It's not that Tennessee doesn't have options. They've got a lot of options. Because I agree with everything you just said. I guess my curiosity is when push comes to shove and you need that 27th out in an elimination game or whatever, and for whatever reason Burns doesn't. Because that's my curiosity, because I could see it being Sewell. I could maybe see it being Kirby Connell under the right circumstance. Probably not. He's a junk balling lefty, but he's pitched a ton of years. You've got A.J. Russell, who's been just lights out, 0.94 ERA. Yeah, 46 strikeouts, 7 innings, 28 and 2. I just feel like a lot of that maybe came midweek and not in high leverage weekend spots. You just don't know how that's going to go, and that's kind of why I asked the question, because I think they're interesting there in the options they've got.
Well, and again, most teams, if you get past their closer and you say, who are you going to use? you might be able to name a name. We
Yeah.
just rattled 4 off. And the Russell kid, who you talked about, didn't pitch in this regional. Last time we saw him, I was in here getting ready for my post-game show, and I'm grabbing my headphones here, and and I'm doing, and I get a good half an inning. It's going to take 9 minutes, something like that, So it's got a little pace to it. 1 out on 1 pitch, 2 outs on 2 pitches, and the third kid from Charlotte in the regional, he retired him in like 4 pitches. And the point is, that kid has been very good. He's very economical. He doesn't fool around. He strikes guys out. I thought it was interesting last night. Tennessee went with a guy who's pitched very, very, very little, whose name's escaped me right now, to get 1 out before they went to Burns. And that just shows you, and the reason his name escapes me, he's another pretty good strikeout guy. He's a midweek guy that gets used a bunch. And the reason his name's escaped me because I was up till 3:30 in the morning doing this. But the point is that he hadn't been used at all in high leverage situations. And last night they went to him with a runner on base in a high leverage spot in that game. It was still a 4-run game at that spot. And what a luxury. And he got a strikeout. And they immediately went out there and got him and put Burns in.
Yeah, the 2 teams in Omaha that have got that kind of pitching are them and Wake Forest. And ironically, they both pitch in small ball. I thought Tennessee's park was small until I saw Wake's.
Wake's tiny.
Wake's pulls was it 300 to right and 310 to left? I don't even know how you do that.
Well, that Alabama deal, look, Alabama
got screwed in that deal. Should have been a 16.
And they should have won the first game.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for those kids because I can't imagine what it's like to be a part of the apparatus of an organization where your head coach bets against you, and the betrayal those kids must have felt and must feel to this day. That's tough. I couldn't imagine as a parent, having kids that played college sports. I can't imagine as a parent thinking about the fact that the person that I entrusted my child with was betting against my child.
And I have you wouldn't blame a lot of those kids if they chose to get out. Just that's a bad situation. How do you trust the next guy? I guess they did trust the next guy because they played pretty well for him. And now he's gone.
Mm-hmm. You're right. It's very, very sad. That was a team I was really rooting for. And I was disheartened to see their draw because those kids, the way they closed the season, deserve better than being cannon fodder for Wake Forest.
You know who was the head of committee, don't you?
Yes.
Auburn's AD. Yeah.
Yes.
Just coincidence, I'm sure.
Who, ironically enough, said,
all right.
Well, you'll like this. My son graduated from Penn, just now in May. So we had the Friday night, the first week, I'm doing my call-in show after a Tennessee game. Well, it was after the Florida game. And we're watching Penn win on Saturday night. All of a sudden they're alive. But when they eliminated Auburn, he was asked about Penn being in his regional in very hubris-like fashion. Cohen said, I really don't know much about Northeastern baseball, which famous last words when they come into your building and beat you. And the Penn team was pretty good, Chris. They were they're indicative of what you have in college baseball now. The 4s are getting better. It's a pretty good sport. Yeah,
it is. And a lot of those kids will be playing at higher profile schools next year, from what I understand, which is a whole other podcast.
There you go.
All right. 2 things before I get you out of the door and maybe let you get some sleep. The lineup, I think, is the concern at this point. It's not like they don't have good hitters. It's just been very hit and miss. Like you said, they hit 210. It was good enough to win with the pitching. What do you make of their lineup going into Omaha?
It's dreadful. I mean, the bottom of their lineup. I
wouldn't go that far, but
it is. I mean, and those guys would tell you though, you can't do that as a team and get through. They're very fortunate to tell about it. Now, the thing that they did in both series is they bunched their hits together. and it was very timely. And so, that's
Yeah.
what you want to do. But for the most part, if you look at Tennessee's lineup, they're unique because in one sense you have borderline 4 to 5 automatic outs. I mean, you're just looking at, when you look at a lineup and you go, okay, this guy scares me, this guy. But the truth is, when I say that, several of the guys that are border on automatic outs at this point can hit the ball out of the ballpark on you.
Yeah.
Which makes them unique. So they're not like hoopty, not very good, never will be very good players. They're just guys that have run hot and cold this year. And Blake Burke's a really good example of that. I mean, he hit the home run in the second game. Then he hit a laser shot off the wall. And then in game 3, he had 2 of the worst at-bats you'd ever see in your life, including one where he gets started with a breaking pitch that's at his ankles, almost went behind him, and he swung at it. The ball was going to hit him, and he hit it, and it went foul because the poor guy, his approach right now, you can just see with some of these guys, their approach is survival rather than what is my plan when I get into a box. And I played that sport. I've been there. It looks like a beach ball. It looks like a BB. I wasn't very good at it. And I certainly didn't have his ability. To see him struggle and scuffle for as long as he struggled and scuffled is one of the great surprises of this season. And I think it's one of the great coaching jobs for Tony to get a team that far that's had that many issues at various times at the plate. Chris, is just remarkable that they're here. So the question about their lineup is what their lineup is, and they need a couple guys to hit or they're going to go home. But they have fielded the ball better.
They have for sure. They didn't kick it around like they did in March at all in postseason when I saw them. All right, here's the question. Somebody asked me, I did a radio show just before you. They asked me about the Tennessee-Alabama or Tennessee-LSU matchup, and my answer was this. They asked me who I thought would win. I said, well, my answer is LSU, but fill in the blank with whoever else. It doesn't matter if it's Tennessee or Wake. I'm going to take LSU in that first game because Paul Skeens is hands down the best pitcher in the country. So anybody's got a problem. Now, that's going to be Tennessee's problem game 1. Now you get them in a 3-game series against LSU, I think Tennessee can win it because the pitching shifts early. If they get that game with LSU with Skeens on the hill, I think they got a real shot to come out of that side. And they may anyway because of the pitching depth. But is there a path to beating Paul Skeens in game 1?
Got to get lucky. Because otherwise, he's going to work into the 8th or 9th inning. Got to get lucky. Got to hope he's having a bad day.
Yeah.
Hope he's struggling with his command, control. Because if he's Paul Skeens, and if you consider a team that just hit 210 in a regional in college baseball, and believe me, watching every one of those at-bats, it was every bit of 210. Felt like it was 180 something. So, quite honestly, I think Tennessee's going to throw Lindsey. I would be inclined to take my ace and put my ace against their ace, but you would do it on a one less day cycle because he pitched on Sunday and he pitched a lot of innings. Speaking of Dolander out there in the heat, I would be almost inclined to do that. But to your point, if you do that, you're almost pot committed at that point if you're Tennessee, versus if you pitch Lindsey, he pitches well, you're somehow able to steal that game. Then you got Dolander going the next day. All of a sudden, you have almost a command on that side of the bracket. You can make that case.
Yeah. Although Wake's got some arms too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets – I just think it's a fascinating side of it. And I think whoever comes out of that is probably going to get Florida, although Virginia's pretty good too. And Florida, to me, Florida might be the best team in the country at this point because their pitching has come through. They had 5 guys, I think, that gave them quality starts by the major league definition, which is all – I don't even know if Tennessee's got that. No, Florida didn't have it all year. It just found it in the postseason, although the pitching was getting better. But that's a scary team. I just think this event's going to be so much fun. Like you said, the best part of that bracket's on the left side, but the best team might be on the right side.
Totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Florida is flat out scary. Offensively,
Yeah.
they are scary. They have depth with their pitching. If you're asking me to pick a team to win it, I think they're going to have the path of least resistance on their side.
Yep.
I think they're going to get out of that thing pretty rested. And I think they're going to be in great shape to do it. Because the team that comes out of the other side of that bracket, when you start thinking about Wake and LSU and Tennessee, and who's the fourth there? There's
Oral
one
Roberts.
more.
It's Stanford. Which did you see the end of that game last night?
Chris. That's ESPN and college baseball doing the game wrong. Because that game should have started at the late night like it should have played, and it doesn't end in twilight where you can't see a ball at twilight. Major league guys will tell you, ball goes up, and they fielded thousands of them. Ball goes up in the air at twilight, and you momentarily lose sight of it. And that poor kid laid on that field knowing that he cost his team all that hard work. They came from 3 down. I mean, that's really disgraceful if you stop and think about it. That's a shame.
We could do a whole other podcast with issues we have of how TV and the NCAA handles baseball right now, and it would be a lengthy one. Well, that would be on the list.
You know, I'm a late comer. I love your passion. The thing that's great about the college baseball space and getting more immersed in it is people like you. And I told you this when you were on with us 3 or 4 years ago when I first encountered you. I said, your joy for this game is infectious. But
thank you.
You're very welcome. College baseball has people like you, though. Chris Burke's one of them. The gentleman, Todd Walker from LSU, who was real nice and came on with us. There are a bunch of people that I would love to take and put in charge of the sport, because you guys would take care of it a lot better than the suits are taking care of it. Yeah. It's such a bizarre sport. I don't understand how you can have a region and not seed teams. When you get a draw, like the Tennessee fans were real upset. And I said, look, here's my take on the air. When you only win 1 road series on the year, don't come bitching to me when you don't get to host in your building for a super regional. Now, that said, they had a higher RPI than Southern Miss, and there were reasons they should have hosted. But you know what? When you don't designate who the number 1, 2 seed is, and you leave that thing up to some arbitrary, are we bidding, are we not, depending on who you talk to, we are bidding or we're not, and all this other stuff that goes into it. And it's almost like, Chris, they don't want to let go of the old way. But if you want to grow your game, don't you have to tell people when you're seeding these teams who the number 1, number 2 seed is, who the number 1, number 3 seed is, in case you get to that? Of course you do, right? I mean, that just makes sense.
Not if you're the NCAA. Well, don't get me started.
They love the good
There's
old
a lot of
stuff,
things.
Though. Yeah.
Well, it is. The thing that always bothers me is the pairing of the 4s, because who you draw as a 4 in a regional can have a lot to say about how you're in. Even if you don't win, if you draw a 4 with the dude who takes you to extra innings, that messes with your pitching. It messes. Yep. I think the disparity in who draws what 4, and sometimes like Oral Roberts should not have been a 4. Like,
crazy.
Here's another thing. We need to bring non-RPI computers into this. And if you looked at them, Oral Roberts would have been no worse than a 3 and maybe a 2. They got a 4 in a regional. That was not a good thing if you're Oklahoma State, which already drew a tough regional to begin with. That's a pet peeve of mine.
It's fair.
The over-reliance on geography at times causes some of that, which I sort of understand it.
Right.
But the not sending broadcasters to regionals.
You got to grow your game. I mean, you're either going to be
we talked before
or not.
Yeah. The draft, they had a great idea doing it during Omaha, I thought, a few years ago, and then the pandemic killed it. I don't know. I'm a guy that I love sports, but if you said, Chris, you can either have baseball or you can have every other sport in the world, but not both, I take baseball selfishly. That's how I feel about the game. But there is something embedded in baseball, and then you stick it with the NCAA, and it gets really bad because they got their own issues that just never can get out of its own way. With game time, you see it
It's
in
a
the
great point.
postseason, major league game. You see it with TV stuff. I mean, you go back 100 years ago, you had a gambling scandal that decided the World Series. You had the PED stuff in the 1990s that drove a lot of people away.
Two
You've got
strikes.
yeah, you've got
season in '94.
Yeah, you've got the one season the baseball is this, and the next season it's that, and they won't tell you. And if you're the scientist out there that's trying to collect the data and say this is what happens, there's a lack of transparency that just seems to be and pigheadedness that seems to be embedded in the game itself. And then you throw the NCAA, which has got its own layers of those things on top of it, and this is what you get. But I'm with you. Yeah. So many things could be solved so easily and would make the game better. It's a great game, but there's so many ways it could be better.
You know what's wonderful about the game, though? With everything you said, at all levels, it is still an incredibly great game. And invariably, when I turn a game on, chances are I'm going to see something I've never seen before, though I've watched thousands of them. I'm going to see something, chances are, I've never seen before. The other sports are not like that. They're just not.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. That there was something I saw this week. I've already blanked on it, but it was one of those. I've seen thousands of baseball games, major league, minor league, college, and you're right. It seems like every week you will see something that and it's not a sport where you just line up and bowl over your opponent. If you got 4s and 5 stars, you're going to win. That's the beauty of baseball is it gives the little guy a chance. And you know what? Go ahead.
Well, you were talking about that Oral Roberts team. This comes to mind, right? So you're going to tell me that's a 4 seed that gets to a super regional, and then they're going to get eliminated, okay? They gave up an 8-0 lead in their first game the other night and won the next 2 games. You better be a darn good club if you can do that. You surrender an 8-0 lead in somebody's building, not yours, and you come back from that? You're going to tell me that's a 4 seed? That's a farce. That's farcical, right?
Oh, I know. It's and you can see these things coming every year. I thought Tennessee got a raw deal with Wright State a couple years ago in the regional before. It shouldn't have been a 4, but it was.
Tony was apoplectic. Yeah, behind the scenes.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, behind the scenes, he was apoplectic about that. And, I thought he was just being Italian, which means, we whine and cry all the time, which is why I'm in a perfect business. But as it turns out, that Wright State team Tennessee saw was phenomenal. They were phenomenal.
Really good. Yeah, had Tyler Black, first-round pick the next draft. Had a lot of – they always win that league. They're always good. But anyway, you've heard my thoughts. All right, here's the parting thing on the way out the door. I've watched a lot of College World Series. I've never seen these win totals going in. Wake Forest, 52-10. Oral Roberts, 51-10. Now, if you get on a heater and win the College World Series, you might end up with 50 wins. Virginia, 50-13. We got 3 teams that are already over 50 wins in this thing, Tony. No, I'm sorry, 4. Florida's 50-15. I'd forgotten that. LSU just missed it at 48-15, preseason number 1. Stanford, 44-18. They just don't play as many games on the West Coast for whatever reason. Tennessee, 43-20. TCU, 42-22. I don't know that I've ever seen a College World Series that had 4 teams that already had 50 wins and everybody over 40. But that's what we have this year, and boy, I can't wait to see it.
It's going to be incredible. They say the win total and the win percentage, it's the best in close to 20 years. And, I was asking Chris Burke today. I said, Burke, is that the best field you've seen? He said, well, in my time of going there, it's got to be. It's got to be. And
I can't think of one better.
No. And it's going to be stars galore, arms galore, stars galore, sluggers galore, strategy galore. It's going to be, for those of us that love the sport, it's going to be a lot of fun this weekend. Every game's going to be great.
I'm going to throw you one more thing. Here, guys, I
Yeah.
think you're going to see go in the first round here in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Wake Forest, third baseman Brock Wilkin, starter Rhett Lauder. That's 2 from Wake.
Mm-hmm.
Or Roberts won't have anybody. Virginia will have Kyle Teal. I don't think Jake Geloff's going to go. I think he's a prospect this year, but I don't think he's that high. Florida, you're going to have Langford, who's been quietly getting a little helium at 1-1. You see some crazy things happen there. The baseball draft's different. Caglione's in the mix for 1-1 next year. Rivera could sneak into the first round. I doubt it. Waldrop's going to be there.
Wow.
If Sprode has a good tournament, he could. He got picked 90th last year. I don't think he's going to make it there this year. Obviously, you got the 1-2 punch of Cruz and Skeens are going to go 1-2 overall, most likely, or 1-3 or something in that. Tommy Troy's going to go first round for Stanford. Braden Montgomery will be a high first rounder next year. Tennessee, you're going to see Dolander go in the first round. Next year you could see Beam go there, could see Burns go there. And TCU, their third baseman's really good. I've gone blank on his name. It's Braden Taylor. He's been a first rounder preseason and through now. He had a good season. So you're going to see a lot of dudes, Tony, that you'll see again at the major league level, I think.
And it's wild. And you know what? College baseball will be really smart to market the sport that way this weekend. I'm not really big into the whole.
I know a guy.
Yeah. Well, I'm not big into the whole, like when I'm watching college football games where they're always going, this guy will play on Sundays, this guy will play on Sundays, this guy. But the truth is, if you want to see tomorrow's stars today, if I'm college baseball, I'm selling to my broadcast partner, hey, let's talk about Paul Skeens Saturday night, and let's try to get a big number. We got these guys in Tennessee who people still watch. They're still expecting some of the annex from last year, Chris. They're not getting them, but they still draw a good number. That Clemson game drew a huge number, as you know. And so I think they could really do some box office Saturday night with that matchup if they position it properly.
Yeah, I think if they position any of them properly, there's enough talent to do damage with any of them. And can't wait to see how it shakes out. Glad the folks of Knoxville have gotten on board and discovered a great sport. I know you guys will. If I told you 10 years ago that we're going to be sitting here in middle of June and the topic on your shows is Tennessee baseball, what would your response have been? I mean, it's the South is where, we can't even talk about basketball because of spring practice in the winter. I mean, it's just crazy to see how it has taken off in your neck of the woods, and I think it's great.
My reply would have been, praise Jesus. It is so much more fun to have a variety of sports to talk about. We had a topic the other day on my show, caller brought up. Would you rather have Georgia's athletic department and control college football, which is allegedly what it's all about, or have Tennessee's athletic department right now and be very good in basketball, very good in baseball, right now pretty good in football, to getting very good? Maybe you don't win a national championship in any of those things, but you compete at the top. And then the women's sports people look at, pretty good in basketball, pretty good in softball. My answer personally, and people think this is crazy, is I would rather have a full, total experience as a fan and doing what I'm doing as well, because we get more opportunities of things to talk about. Is there a better value in the world than this college baseball stuff for what people pay to get into these games, for all the bang and you talk about bang for your buck? That weekend series Tennessee just had, Chris, feels like it was 7 weeks long with all those rain delays and all that. It really does. Yeah. And it was just 3 games, but it was just so much bang for your buck. We did a watch party the other day for the game, and we had a couple hundred people at a watch party. And I'm going, what are we doing? Tennessee, a college baseball watch party? These are things I never thought I'd say.
Oh, I know. It's and the thing that I love about it is it's a different game every day.
Yep.
Because of who's on the mound. And it's not like that in basketball.
Nope.
You know, I mean, you can finagle some matchups and go zone and stuff to some degree, but nothing like in baseball, and in football, forget it. You know, you're not going to see Nick Saban go, well, you know, we like Bryce Young, but we want to go with Milroe because he's gives you more trouble in the running. That just, those nuances don't happen in football. And I'm with you. I would rather be entertained year round than just have one thing to hyper focus on, because to me, after a while, that just gets, I mean, winning doesn't get old, but the hyper focus on it 12 months of the year to me would.
It wears me out.
Yeah.
I had people emailing me saying, you're talking too much baseball. I'm going to go listen to Eric Ainge. I told them, go have fun. Go have fun. I'm going to talk about things to keep myself interested. And, you know, look, I love college football, but 365 days of the year, it's a great sport, but other things merit conversation as well.
Yeah, which is how we turned about a 20-minute show into 50 minutes.
You're the man, brother.
Which I was trying not to do out of your lack of
yeah.
sleep.
Thank you, man.
But well, hey, let me let you go so you can get some rest. But on your way out, tell folks, if they don't know already, where they can find your stuff.
Yeah. So every time Tennessee plays a baseball game, a football game, a basketball game, the big baseball games, we do post-game call-in shows, but I'm on every day. tclub.team is how you find me. Again, tclub.team. Last night we went to about, I'm not kidding you, 2:45, something like that. I had a couple people email me and say they were out driving late night, and we helped them get a couple hours into their drive. Some people drove back from Hattiesburg, which is just crazy to me, but they said they couldn't wait to get out of there. But we just enjoy what we do. We enjoy community. I enjoy people. God's gifted me with a platform, and I enjoy what I do. So thanks, Chris. I appreciate you as well, man.
Likewise. Say hello to Brian Hartman for me. Tell him to get some sleep too. God bless you guys. And if this goes far in Omaha, we'll have you on again.
Love to do it, man. Continued success, man.
All right. He's Tony Basilio. I'm Chris Lee of Southeastern 14. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the subscribe button, enable your notifications, hit the like button. All those things help us out. Thanks for watching. God bless you all. We'll see you again soon at Southeastern 14.